So now it's time to take a look at the financial sector. As known, AI is used in different sectors like but for insurance and the banking sector, it's used quite a lot more because companies can help in productivity if it helps with the profit, and there's caution in the sector which needs to be considered. We're going to we'll be addressing this topic with our next speakers, but before prior to this, we're going to invite the president of the AI R&D from JP Morgan Chase, one of the most well-known worldwide reference, Professor Manuela Veloso, Professor Emeritus at Carnegie Mellon University. I'm already connected.
Seja muito bem-vinda.
Welcome.
Eu estou ligada com o vídeo e com...
Muito bem, já está a chegar para os nossos espectadores da internet, só aqui é que não estamos ainda a vê-lo, mas vamos vê-lo. Muito bem, professora, esperamos o seu contexto para depois eu poder conversar com os nossos convidados.
Waiting for your keynote speech. Thank you very much for the invitation. This is an academic presentation. Should I speak in English or in Portuguese, says the professor. Do you want me to speak in English or in Portuguese, José?
Okay, I'll do it in English. I think it's in English. Portanto, what I'm going to tell you is a little bit about just these humans and AI, one way or another, trying to understand this interaction between what AI can do and what humans can do. And I only have 15 minutes, so this is going to be very fast. First of all, let me just highlight that AI, the science of artificial intelligence, is in fact something that tries to cover all the aspects of intelligence, all the aspects of learning, and therefore is a science of components. So we have to have natural language understanding. We have to have all sorts of speech understanding, image understanding, and all sorts of like any data processing. And that's what we call this perception. And then the cognition is the reasoning about all these data and the learning from these data, and eventually also the interaction with other agents, with other ability to have access to other information, and then the actual action. So this eventually integration was introduced with this word agents, which we now see everywhere, as the ability to integrate the data processing, the perception, the cognition, which is the reasoning, and eventually the actions. And it was done in the early 90s by Alan Newell at Carnegie Mellon University, who introduced this term agents as this integration of these three components. So I'm going just to focus on a little bit just one, what are agents, and then eventually give an example of what we can do with Gen AI that I would like to highlight. So agents, one way or another, are pieces of code that exhibit these three main components: the understanding of a task, the solving of the task, and the doing. So agents are somehow focused on solving a specific task. And so for the perception, you have these external observations, you have all sorts of like understanding requests, understanding messages from others. And then very importantly, when you think about an agent, it has its internal observations. It has its own kind of like a view of the world. And then it does do the reasoning, giving these observations. How, in fact, can you solve the problem? And solving a problem means generating actions that can be executed. So all these things go hand in hand in the sense that when you talk with your technology developers, when you think about AI and agents, is about defining what are the actions that can be executed, what are the observations that the agent can have, and literally what is the reasoning that's going to connect these observations to actions. I'm going to give just a very simple example of what I call the DocuBot agent that is able to basically generate PowerPoint slides from text requests. So add a slide with some title and insert an histogram from some Excel, use column C. And through this language, this agent is able to eventually generate an actual PowerPoint slide. So here is an example of this agent in action. And this agent basically says, how can I help you today? And literally the human might say, run some execution analysis template for the last POV by order for company blah. DocuBot says done, and literally this runs this analysis, and all these slides are generated automatically from that request that had a template kind of like set of slides, and the language instantiates that template and is able to basically generate these slides. Now, what's important is that this DocuBot ends up like, interacting with the humans for further instructions. Do you have any further instructions? And then now the human in this agent, they can correct this set of slides, and literally they can ask to modify things in the actual information, modify the number of levels, modify the where the figures are. And then the DocuBot agent has one thing, which is when it does not understand, it might ask, what do you mean center the figures? All of them or not? So there is this interaction between humans and AI that is this dialogue until eventually the AI can do what the human requests. So I want to highlight that these AI agents ask for help from humans, attend their requests, but also continuously learn. So the view of AI, one way or another, in the finance industry or in any industry that was not born necessarily digital, is that in fact we have to have in our code, in our interaction with the computers, kind of a diamond, a test that wonders if AI can solve this task. And if AI can solve, you give it to this little yes, you give it to the AI-driven process. If not, then the humans do the solving. But then when we actually have the AI doing it, we can check that if there is confidence on this. And if there isn't, you give it back to the human. And then there is a box, which is very important, this memory box, that remembers how the humans or AI solved past problems. And literally, it hopefully improves the abilities over time. So what I wanted to just highlight for this group, for this conference, is that in this interaction between humans and AI for a business purpose, this is not about like just have AI, Gen AI, do it all. It's about being able to develop this interaction in which humans and AI eventually get better over time. So this is the framework. I'm going just to spend a little bit of time, just next 3 minutes, just telling you about some features of Gen AI that I think are important to highlight, and then I'll conclude. So for generative AI, one of the main things that it can do is it can code for you. So basically, you can say, write a Python program that reads in a file named ibm.csv and and plot columns, whatever the price in blue and whatever, and send it to a file. So no matter what you like to do on the data, to understand the data, given that the data needs to be translated into ways that the humans can process them, the data, you can ask a Gen AI to generate, and Gen AI returns a piece of code like the one here showed in blue that enables you to basically run and get this plot literally, how do you say, instantaneously after you run this. So you get used to interact with Gen AI for the needs that you have in terms of the digital information available in the computer. So if you see here, the dates are not very readable. And you can say the dates are hard to read. Can you print the dates less frequently? Again, just English. And literally, these generative AI says certainly, gives you more code. And now the dates are slanted and only plotted sometime. So now you just said in English, can you print the dates less frequently? And this less frequently was understood by Gen AI to really be something that puts an interval. If this would not be the right interval, you could have continued dialoguing, but instead you can ask, like, please add another plot that shows the percentage of increase in price each day. Again, it gives you some code, and you get this ability to really see this other change of price underneath instantaneously, again, through this code that you can run and have it. And then finally, this is important, you can say things that refer to literally like these kind of like, how do you say, libraries that you understand exist, like RAMSAC. Can you add a red line that fits the data using RAMSAC? And on the bottom, can you have an horizontal line and some kind of dotted lines on plus and minus standard deviation? And interestingly, it understands it all and does what you need. So this power of generative AI to bridge the gap between the digital information and the needs that the humans, the companies may need, without necessarily having to go through the knowledge of how to program or how to do this. These are not very complex programs. They are not like find the next prime number programs. They are programs that access the data, and through these language, you are able to, through generative AI, to achieve exactly these types of like needs. And then you can also do more sophisticated requests rather than just RAMSAC or just plots of standard deviation. But you can ask, like, who are the top 5 administrators by total access for BlackRock funds released before 2020 as a pie chart. And again, the code returns it, you run on your data, and you get the pie chart representation. Or you can ask for a sunburst filter to Blackstone and then make a sunburst chart for total fund access. And now it does the sunburst for you. And then you can do like the last step, which is you can have your own API, not sunburst, not RAMSAC, not some pie chart, but you can have your own functions. And then you can say, do some kind of like retrieve, summarize, and compare. And it's supposed to use the way that you want the problem to be solved. And it just generates a plan that uses these APIs and the response. So the first thing, this thing I wanted to share is this ability that Gen AI has to interact with the data, interact with what it knows through code that it can also generate. Finally, I just want this last one is just to make you aware of the power of Gen AI, one way or another, in terms of understanding how to understand data. And so these are 4 examples, very simple, that Joe likes cats, Pat likes cows, Mary likes fish. What do they have in common? And surprisingly, ChatGPT says something that is like, okay, they all like different animals. Okay, nothing's talked about animals, and ChatGPT knows that cows, cats, and fish are animals. This is major because in AI, we always struggled with the ability to do these generalizations, to do these ontologies, to understand all sorts of relationships between entities. And ChatGPT knows, because of its large language model, it knows these examples. Another one, there is lots of traffic in Manhattan between 5 and 7. Why? And it comes up with the term rush hour. This is very important because, again, before in AI, we didn't have access to these abstractions and a lot of like knowledge and a lot of like we had to build this understanding. And then finally, one more. So if you say I enter the store that sells fruit, cereal, and meat, again, grocery store. Again, like this abstraction. And the reason why I'm showing you this is because also if you have now in the financial world transactions in which, okay, we have transactions of entering some kind of of some kind of restaurant, a Balthazar, and then some boucherie and something, what do they have in common? And it comes up with the abstraction French cuisine, which will enable us to eventually understand much more the customers, because Gen AI can also generalize, and then you can address that French cuisine is something that they like just by their actual actions. And so, in conclusion, I just want to understand, for us to understand that AI automates processes. It can learn. It can ask for help. What do you mean? Do you mean to center all the pictures of these slides? Do you mean to what do you want? Do you mean and it can report, explain, alert, anticipate, analyze, and it kind of knows, in quotes, a lot of the things that we assume that maybe the machine does not know, and in fact we can use that kind of like language model. Humans can set requests, they provide help, they split tasks, they talk, and they also know. So I just wanted us to step back, and one of the exercises we can eventually do is this exercise to try to understand what AI can do for the businesses in which we are. And one final thing that I really would like just to share with everybody is that the role of the business is threefold. So basically, the business interacts with AI on its needs. It actually needs to be able to have AI help with understanding data. So there are needs that business has, which AI can address. The second is that the business might have pain points. It might have things that would like to be done more efficiently. So one is needs, actual needs. The other one is this thing about AI bringing efficiency to the business, AI making things less painful, more effective. And so that's a huge area that AI can address. And the third one, and this is how I will finish, is in fact the ability for the business to dream big. So the business needs to really see what would make a gigantic difference if AI could help, be it anticipation, be it like alerts, be it all sorts of like analysis of data and processes that may lead into a significant improvement in the business. That's the dreaming part. And so I just leave you with this business and AI are about these three components: the needs, the effectiveness or the tedious things, and the dreams. And for those three, we need to address AI in different ways. Thank you very much. And I hope you continue with a great conference. And thanks for having me.
Bom, ficou feito o contexto em inglês, mas acho que todos nós entendemos. Vamos agora conversar sobre isso mesmo com os próximos convidados.
We've already heard
que é administradora
the professor set the stage. So welcome Isabel Guerreiro from Banco Santander and Pedro Pizarro, co-founder and Chief Science Officer. Let me start with Isabel. How AI, how is it being used in the bank? Is it or not a reality? First of all, thank you for inviting me. As for AI, when the generative AI has been launched. However, it's already been used largely because of this new Gen AI's reality. The machine learning component is applied to many Santander contexts or groups, from decisions, risk decisions, efficiency gain, how to propose offers to our customers. And with Gen AI, there's an awareness, a significant change in awareness on the possibilities that AI can bring. And sometimes it's a bit of a fantasy because without an essential condition, that is data being structured, available, nothing could happen. Assuming that these conditions have been met, then What we did, we paved the way, and at this moment we're also using Gen AI. So at a first phase, it's classical AI machine learning, and at a phase, still at an embryo phase, we've used it multiple times where we've seen there's been an increase 3-4%, but when there's a change, no, not in from classical AI. The main gains are efficiency on one hand and efficacy, effectiveness, that is presenting the best solution, the best context, in the best scenario for the customer. These are the benefits. And Gen AI, in the case of citizens using more in a business logic than efficiency, it's in productivity increase 2-3 folds than we would have without its use. And also, it increases risks in addition to productivity. The industry I represent, and I'm a bit suspicious in relation to what I'll be saying, it's I represent one of the most regulated sector besides the pharma industry. Because of dealing with very sensitive information. Yes, AI can be used positively or negatively, but in terms of Gen AI changes, are there more risks? There are potentials, yes. Fraud risks of fraud increase, not only not only as such, it's a reality. One of the tools that we used in the past are no longer used. And there are also risks, some risks that use using sensitive information which is not adequate. I'm not a defender. I wouldn't say it works, but it's important because of the impact. So you use AI with more caution. Can you use it in a reassuring way? Yes, it's being used in the case of specific moments with a logic. The logic behind is what is the reason, what is the business benefit for me, for the client. And so I would say it's not yet in a lab, but not used at a scale level, because it entails a change of a management change, a manager change. Pedro, you started in a certain way and you went through many hardships. Does this relate to using, the more we use AI, more risks, and we'll need a company like yours? Thank you for the invitation. Floow is a company that detects frauds. We work with large banks. We detect frauds regarding credit cards, debit cards, opening fake accounts, money laundering. So we work with these financial crimes associated to banking products. We protect the banks, the account holders, and the shopkeepers. The better is AI, the more you're going to be growing as a company, because there's a race on both sides, and as was mentioned, because of organized crime and the fraudsters, there's an AI is being used for what is bad, new attacks, new scams, scam attempts are being used. People in this audience are using phishing scams, fake messages on Facebook, and it was easy to detect because they were fake, they were written with mistakes, and nowadays it uses an official language, and it seems that this message is correct. There's an increase of fraud generated due to AI, but there are benefits from AI, that is in terms of our business growing, to improve fraud detection as well as productivity, to make the product more efficient. For example, we know that organized crime fraudsters, they do on purpose, they attack more intensely during the weekends because they know that the banks have fewer employees. They try to attack the system when it's weaker, and AI helps the system. Although there are people making decisions, we're able to automate more the difficult cases for AI, to release, to give more time to people, that is for the more complicated cases. How do you, how can you anticipate a fraud, a scam? Do you have to think as a hacker, as a criminal? Do you have to hire a hacker? Yes, we do have some people working in our company with that mindset. And there's people on Telegram and dark web. What are the strategies being used, and how the fraudsters, you see, are trying to bypass the system? It's also based on a history, a track, or based on a history. We started using AI since 2012. We've been working for a very long time. So did you feel what Isabel mentioned? There's been quite a big change from the classical AI to Gen AI. I felt that the barrier went down, and that there's appetite to try this business. There's a powerful tool, and very quickly you're able to see something which is visible. It's very easy to start with Gen AI, but more difficult to conclude. It's easy to make a prototype that almost works, but maybe it doesn't work as well. What's the obstacle? Gen AI, contrarily to a normal software, unlike a normal software, doesn't produce the same outcome. It has a random, unpredictable component, which is difficult to control, to monitor, and it's sensitive to the prompts, the way we interact, and it's not always stable. It can be attacked. There's a prompt injection where people are writing text. They can write incoherently, and they can try to bypass the system. So AI, in spite of being very powerful, is something a bit more. It's inconsistent, with errors, the delusional aspect, the fake acts represented as if they were true. And sometimes people believe these facts, and because of it, it's easier to start, but it's not always difficult. But it's always difficult to finish a Gen AI project. The percentages for trade is difficult because of the lack of quality.
Because of the evolution of AI, the hiring and the profile of professionals that are needed in the banking sector has also changed. Is it changing because of that? It's publicly known that the banking sector has undergone a deep restructuring, and for some years now, especially during the pandemic and after the pandemic, we significantly changed the profile of the people we hire. I think it's funny because for many years I was the only engineer working at the bank, and now suddenly there are many more, and that's great news. Typically, someone coming to the banking sector came from business or law. Currently, what we look for are the STEM profiles. And we have a strong team, data scientists, data engineers. We also have developers, architects. Oh, you mean someone who masters this language? Yes, the digital marketing also. There was a relevant change. And the large majority of people still have that management or law background, but colors are different, so to speak. We have people with the STEM profiles, and this is different. Now, this is a naughty question to ask someone who works in a bank. A bank, to protect itself from criminals, also needs people who think like them. Well, the good news is that I agree with what Pedro said. We also have the so-called white hackers, and we have a team, a strong team, that frequently participates in competitions in-house and outside the group in this white hacking competitions, and we need people with this profile. And I agree with what Pedro said. Whenever there's a Black Friday, Easter, Christmas holidays, we're sure that the attacks will start. So the teams get ready, because that's what happens. And so and the quality of these attacks is increasingly higher. In the past, we would immediately see it was an attack. Now, it's not difficult for to be misled. With this type of technology and this way of acting, who's the most common target? Is it the small customer or the bank itself? The fraudsters are extremely sophisticated. So, depending on how it is easier or less easy to tap into our system, and of course, if I can attack a company, private equity client that has bigger amounts, it's interesting, but unfortunately, these also have a higher level of protection, so they go for many small amounts, because people are less IT savvy, or sometimes the protection is smaller. Pedro, I don't want names or lists, but your main customers, we're talking about financial institutions, private individuals, millionaires, basically financial institutions, those that make payments, large banks, smaller banks, level 1, level 2, level 3. We work with all banks. We have customers in New Zealand, Canada, Brazil, Germany. So we have customers everywhere. And just to give a notion of our scale this year, we will process around $8 trillion in operations that occur every 10 days. And this only happens because we are literally working with hundreds of customers a day, with millions of customers. Visa protects 1 billion of accounts of people throughout the world. What is the trend regarding financial fraud? Is it to objectively steal money to get rich, or it's more than that? When we talk about attacking a bank or a financial system, attacking all the banks or the stock exchange, and there's chaos, someone benefits from that. What is the dimension of this type of crime? The big trend has been an increase of the so-called scams. It's the person who unwillingly and not knowing is helping the criminal and transferring the money. And we can talk about those scams where you get the WhatsApp message, "Hi mom, my dad, I need money," or very high amounts of dozens of millions, and someone is being misled in a big institution. There was a famous case 6 months ago, and this was published in the news. Someone was believing that he was having a Zoom meeting with the colleagues in his company, namely the financial director, and in that Zoom call, everybody was fake. No one was the real person, but they looked like his colleagues. So this was an avatar that looked like the financial director, etc., etc. And you should do this transfer quickly, and the person transferred 25 million. Just like that. And this was one of the rare cases that show up in the news, because this is very embarrassing for companies. And I don't know if people are aware of this, but scams these days are not only the biggest financial crime and the biggest crime, more than all the other crimes together in other countries. For example, in the UK, scams represent more than 50% of everything else, namely armed robbery, fiscal fraud. Everything together is less than these scams. So clearly this is a trend. It's still growing, and I believe it will continue to grow, because currently the weakness link is the person, the individual, and the scams use misleading messages, misleading video, audio messages, because they are customized for that person specifically. So if you can find information on LinkedIn, Facebook, you can find some people's names, their colleagues' names, to whom that person reports to. And these messages are very well prepared, and information is collected from different sources, and they build a narrative, and the person himself or herself is misled and does the transfer. Isabel, you were talking about regulation. There are rules for you, your company, and my question is, to which extent is this regulation hindering the life of people? I believe that's not yet the case, but the regulator can have a positive role to play. For example, in Brazil, the Bank of Brazil some years ago did something that was very successful, and that was to force the banks in a very short period of time to have a payment system in real time, similar to our MBWay, and that's PIX. And Brazil was a country that didn't have any real-time payment system, and it's now ahead of Norway, Denmark, and Singapore. And they have the highest penetration rate of digital payments, and Brazil gained a lot from this. First, the state was able to take many businesses from the black market, and it became visible, but it also protected people. On the other hand, and what was interesting to be done by the regulator, you're being forced to do something, but I will facilitate, for example, and this was what they did, the establishing of new banks with new solvability, solvency ratios and capital needs, and this increased competition. So new banks were established, new banking services were established, and very quickly this was creative, and they started offering new products in the market. You can do partial transfers, ask for an advance, get a loan. So a whole series of banking services appeared, and these are beneficial for the economy. So it was a win-win for everybody, users, traders, the country, because the regulator played a very good role. On one hand, it demanded the new service, but on the other hand, it facilitated the market. Sometimes I believe this is not being well done in Europe. The famous AI Act is an extremely complex document. It's a very long document, over 400 pages, with references to other documents on privacy, data processing. And this means, just in order to understand what can be done, it's very complicated. And many of the wording used is dubious. Although there are good intentions, it states that AI cannot be used to manipulate people. And of course, we don't want AI to manipulate people, but isn't marketing about manipulating people? When we use AI to find out the customer's needs. So there's a bit of manipulation when you're doing marketing, the management of products, the management of music. So a company working in this field asks, can I do this or can't I? And this is not good for a regulation when doubt exists. Regulation should be easy to understand, easy to implement, and I believe this is what we should do better in Europe. You're a head of a bank, you have responsibilities, so this type of regulations is also confusing for you, not the regulation of what needs to be fulfilled because you're a financial institution. I'm talking about the use of AI. I agree with Pedro. In fact, there's a big tendency to make the frameworks very complex.
Há uma classificação do que se pode fazer e do que não se pode fazer que é relativamente clara.
What you can do, what you can't do, but what needs to be done is whether people accept for their data to be used or not. But there are certain things I cannot do. For example, I cannot define this for the scoring of a customer. I cannot use information that can constitute a discrimination of the customer. Health-related information, yes. And in the case of health, by definition, that cannot be used to make a health insurance. There is an attempt to protect the consumer. Sometimes, in fact, an excessive concern about protecting the consumer leads us to the opposite, and businesses have this aversion to risk, because certain things may decrease the innovation capacity. Pedro wanted to add something. Yes, about protecting the consumer. This is interesting because we work with many different geographies and nationalities, and sometimes we see that the regulator in a given geography for a given reason does something, and in another geography for the same reason the opposite is done. Let me go back to Brazil. In Brazil, in order to protect the consumer, the banks must share data to prevent fraud. If someone is committing fraud, I will inform the other banks this person is a fraudster. Be careful. In Europe, according to the protection of the consumer, the sharing of data is banned. So the opposite was decided. So we need to choose the most favorable country. We were discussing frauds and cyber attacks, and this is a concern for financial institutions and the consumers at large. So what can a bank do to be more productive, to have more customers, and to attain its goal of management? How can AI be used today with the new generation of AI, knowing about the needs of the customers, selling better products? How is this done? First, the approach we have regarding everything that is related with AI and Gen AI is related with the purpose. We don't use AI for the intellectual satisfaction of whomever, but the purpose is to give more productivity to banks. So identify the context where the choice to use AI and Gen AI will be better, or we will achieve better results either from the viewpoint of efficiency or efficacy. Examples where in fact this is already being done. everything related with the streamlining of processes or procedures. And, for example, mortgages, this has to be super efficient, and this is fundamental to ensure the success among my customers to have an immediate response capacity, and the time to cash is as fast as possible. So if I'm able to train a model that learns quickly, and with that I have all the procedural component taken care of, this makes me more efficient. This is an advantage for the customer and for the bank, because the time to cash is faster, and it's an advantage for me because an effort that was made by people in the past, now we don't have the same needs, and the level of precision with what Pedro mentioned to avoid hallucination, probably precision is even higher. And this is sometimes scary. Other examples, let's imagine I can have a search coach, and I'm a seller, and if I'm able to understand which is the most efficient way in a customer context to make a proposal, I can have higher rates, and this is an efficiency example. What about conquering customers? Because there's a fearsome competition to conquer customers, so how can AI be used to that extent? These days, everything that is related with digital marketing, you need a lot less people being able to have a marketing communication journey. That's why Pedro talked about manipulation. And if it is targeted to that person's profile, this is what TikTok does and everybody else. You've seen the impact this can have. As a journalist, this means less people in marketing, less people in the bank's branches. It's normal that this has been happening. This Gen AI will make us progress more in that area, that in the financial area there will be less humans. You see, I believe that discussion is encompassing discussion, and in fact, objectively, these solutions have a direct impact on the labor force needs. I believe that, as in the past, whenever there was a revolution, there was the capacity to change, to transform, and new jobs were created. My expectation about this, and I'm very optimistic, this will happen again too. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we need to do the recycling, reskilling of people. What we can't do is to ignore the problem. In your case, is it also like this, or do you increasingly need more people to develop and also to try your product, or do you also use artificial intelligence to replace people?
No, we're hiring, and we still think that we lack the talents, and the more difficult factor is to hire talents, and I think we're very far, fortunately, from this. And we've seen cases where companies take a long time to reduce their headcount. When they're reducing, it didn't work very well. The CEO of Cornet said it would replace its call center by agent, and hired his call center, hiring the call center again. And again, what's going to happen is to combine technology. There will be surely enough changes in work. Different competence needs different skills, and what I see is that there will be so many changes because these AI projects are not typical. That is a ramp-up cost and a ramp-up down. No, there's a ramp-up cost and then it never goes down. Gen AI, it's like they're like divas. They have to be trained, cleaned. There's quite a lot of innovation, new models. We have a new model from a supplier. It's not 6 months after, but 6 days. It can be better or not. from the competitors. So there's a team working on these models. There are now new professions that are trying to optimize and control and monitoring these AI systems. Yesterday, we heard the leaders in the defense sector. We were thinking about Star Wars, and one of the questions I asked them was, can we leave AI making this decision and pulling the trigger, know who the criminal and the one being who pulling the trigger, pulling would be very sad for it to happen. I hope it doesn't happen. And clearly, there will be AI that is in every place where there's a decision to be made, even if it's a huge decision or not as important. There can be AI. It's as simple as using rain sensors, your windscreen wipers. In any place, you can put AI. It's our choice where we're going to put it. As society, where we're going to put AI, and I don't think it should be put in these dramatic cases, because we know that AI does fail. I've been working in AI for a very long time. There are false positives, false negatives, and we know that at the end of the day, it's not AI which is liable, but it's who designed the system, who produced it, is liable, is responsible. And the banking sector is different from defense, from insurance. It deals with a lot of numbers. I'm not an engineer. I'm a lay person. So the fertile field of AI, is it thinking of AI? Is the bank decided on using these algorithms with a human decision? Is it on that path? Yes, many decisions. And then algorithms, using algorithms risk decisions, at least the most simple ones are decided by humans. It's not paving the road in that sense. No, a simple loan, for instance, can be decided by AI. Contracting a loan with conditions, yes, in terms of risk, yes, it can be decided by AI, but there's a human being that can accept or reject that proposal. But quite often, supposedly, in his automatic system, there's already a quality of data like transparency. The system is fair between sex, genders, auditing to the system, and in these systems, there has to be nodded before, prior, post, quality. Yes. So you're, both of you are linked to these network. Isabel, that idea of us human beings being lazier will let AI be ahead of us. So for two people as pragmatic, like I referred to earlier, I'm very optimistic, and if I'm not optimistic, I don't think we'll have a dystopic society. You are describing a dystopic society in science fiction. I believe that there are endless possibilities and also dangerous threats, pitfalls, what Pedro mentioned about scams. And there was an excellent podcast saying that it's already worth, the scams are worth $3 trillion. It's the most profitable business that you can think of. And I'm optimistic, and I believe that we'll always be capable, we'll always be able to adapt ourselves, but being conscious that that reality we saw as humanoids might not be as distant. Pedro, are companies like you be in the forefront, that is being ahead of the criminals, because they're even more sophisticated, and with clearly I think there's a race with technology, is a race. I don't think AI will be doing everything and will be on vacation not doing anything. So as species, we're very creative. We create work, we invent tasks, we like to do things. Quite often we even feel that we have a mission in our life in relation to what we do, what we can contribute to. I've seen people are creative, drawing. There's a person that wrote a cartoon, a cartoon for his daughter. So I see that AI has the potential to do new things. The chemical physical Nobel Prize was with AI's contribution. Thank you very much, Isabel and Pedro. And now, let's move on to the Best Thesis Award ceremony.